No, I was saying generally no. Everyone loves an emoji, Mr. Cashman, more than most these days. But um, generally for navigation, I say no. And the reason for that is mainly for accessibility. And who's to say that your emoji isn't going to be read a different way by different people, which means that you're adding confusion to your navigation as opposed to being clear.
Let's get started, everybody. It's January 21st, 2026, and we're going to talk about SharePoint navigation, global hub, and site strategies that work. Gang is all here today, so that's really good. And then today's topic, as I said, we're going to talk about the different types of navigation. We'll go into some navigation better practices. What does and doesn't belong in the nav, we'll cover that as well, and some options along the way. And then we'll get to know the SharePoint app bar a little bit. These are some topics that we have talked about in the past, so that's cool, but I think we've never brought it together all as one topic, and it has been since 2021 that we even talked about navigation at all. So I'm sure we have some things to share from the whole group, so that'll be good. All right, let's kick things off, Derek, with the different types of navigation that we have right now.
Sure thing. All right. So as you can see from this slide, there's a lot of different navigation elements that we have at our disposal for Microsoft 365. I think we've got the app launcher, or as I call it, the waffle in the top left-hand corner. That really gives you access to all the different Office apps. You can actually add your own custom apps or links to your own custom apps in there as well. We've got our hub site navigation, which if you're using hub stuff, hub navigation, you can sort of go across all of the sites in your hub. We've got your Insight navigation for obviously Insight navigation. And then also inside the app bar right now, we have the ability to add global navigation, which is accessible across your entire SharePoint instance, as well as inside of Teams. And then also I added this one at the end, is we have the footer that you can enable on different communication sites for like in-site-based navigation. So the rest of the team is going to start to pull apart some of these different items later on in the presentation, but here's just sort of an overarching theme of what it is that we've got on the screen. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about some navigation best practices. Next slide. Now, of course, better practices, not best practices. As a general rule, top-level navigation, whatever that means for your intranet, whatever it means for your website, should be broad and shallow, meaning that it should be sort of bigger, broader buckets, but it should go down a little bit and help fill it out. Now, it doesn't need to include everything. 100%. You should not be putting every single last nav element or everything that every CEO asks for into your navigation. Also, one of the things that folks use a lot is either the one-click rule or the three-click rule, where everything needs to be available within one click. That is something that people talk about a lot, but it's never actually been documented and studied with real practice. Like none of the user research that's been done by the Nielsen Norman Group has ever really validated the three-click rule or the one-click rule. What users tend to focus on, and I'll talk about this in a second, is the scent of information. Now, when you're building out your navigation, it's really important to make sure that you focus your navigation elements, the words, the buckets, how you're pulling things together based on the tasks that your users are trying to accomplish. We generally don't, as a better practice, build our navigation out based on like your org structure, right? It's not a pyramid. It's not a top-down sort of navigation element. We're trying to focus on what are the things that you're trying to do. Are you trying to access different applications outside of outside of M365? Are you trying to enter time? Those kinds of interaction points where the users are focused. Now, when it comes to the different labels on your navigation should be clear and concise. We try to use a term called front-loaded labels, and what that means is put the most important information first. And the reason we do that is because basically user research has been done to say the users don't read more than like 12 or 13 characters in a navigation element. So when you go in and look at it, you want to get the first word, the most important words first, because that's what people are actually going to read.
Hi.
So something like
that's like
what?
I had a boss once who had I'm gonna age myself, but you remember the Blackberries, and if I'd send him an email, he'd get the email on the Blackberry, and he finally just said to me, he's like, if you want me to pay attention, you have to get your entire message in the first 250 characters, or I'm not gonna read it.
I mean, exactly. It's that's he's not wrong. And when
Right.
the user research folks have done extensive studies on this, both in user reading patterns on the web and also how users interact with different devices. And that's one of the things that they came up with. So for instance, if you have a link for benefits related to, medical related benefits, a label named, a link made it named medical benefits, or a heading that says benefits and a link that says medical is much better than something that says benefits-medical, benefits-dental, because users are going to focus on that first word. Now, the other thing is what
Ami has a question in the chat.
Yeah.
Should you use an emoji in your nav name? And I think some of us do and some of us don't. Is there a rule of thumb, Patrick?
I just responded to that.
Oh, did you? Oh, okay. Patrick says generally no. No, go ahead, Patrick.
Yeah. I was saying generally no. Everyone loves an emoji, Mr. Cashman, more than most these days. But generally for navigation, I say no. And the reason for that is mainly for accessibility. And who's to say that your emoji isn't going to be read a different way by different people, which means that you're adding confusion to your navigation as opposed to being clear and using what everyone would understand. There is a caveat to that, just because I am going to play the consultant here. There is a depends there, and that would be if there's something within your organization that is known as this icon or this emoji, then that would be one instance where I might allow that to go through. So if, a checkbox means something specific to your organization and it's a colloquial term to your group, then I might let it go. But 9 times out of 10, I'm not, for accessibility reasons. The screen reader is not going to be able to do that, and it's too easy to be misconstrued as something like Mark Cashman in the comments. Is that a high five? Is that the number 5? Is that...
Hello.
I was just showing you that I was getting a little too yellow over the weekend, and I think I may have a little jaundice.
Yeah.
All right, Derek. Take it back over.
Yeah. All right. So the other thing to think about, obviously, you're front loading your labels, but make sure that you're using familiar and consistent terminology. Make sure that you're referencing benefits using the same terminology, the same type of thing across all your different sites, all your different navigation elements. And try not to use jargon. If you have a TPS report and you want to make sure that you have the TPS, you do the TPS
you just
dashboard.
Use jargon while describing it, saying
I
TPS?
used jargon exactly. So we want to make sure that we know a new user may not know what TPS stands for, and so you want to make sure that you don't use jargon and you use words that really do mean what they mean to the end users. And the other thing is making sure that you group like-minded content together. Make sure that you're putting things in buckets with like-minded things. Next slide, Julie, please.
Mm-hmm.
All right, a couple of last things. This is sort of going back to that like 1-click rule or 3-click rule. That doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Make sure that you're giving the users the scent of information. Every click should get them closer to what they're looking for. It should help. Every level of navigation should help them get down closer to where they need to be. And as long as they feel like they're moving in the positive direction, they'll keep going down your navigation path. And then lastly, and this is sort of one for me, is that if you can see it, you should be able to click on it. So make use of audience targeting here if something needs to be hidden from certain users. Don't have links that are available in your navigation that go to a site that's security trimmed for, say, only managers, unless the link in the navigation is actually security trimmed. And that's all I got for you.
All right, well then we'll switch over and dive into the global nav next. Mark Anderson.
Yep. So global nav is, we sort of think of it as the highest level, but it usually comes from a lower level. So Patrick will cover a little bit about that when he gets to some other things. But in the global nav, what we're really trying to do is it's sort of the highest level of nav. And so you want content that you want links to content that are really within the tenant or outside the tenant, which then therefore sort of sounds pretty much like the whole universe of places that you can go. But it is the broadest set of navigation that you have. You get the global navigation when Viva Connections is enabled, and usually it is. This has changed a little bit over time, but it's tethered to your home site, and Viva Connections then takes the whichever navigation that you choose and surfaces it also in Microsoft Teams. So global is a little bit of a misnomer here. It really brings that navigation into SharePoint and Teams, not every app and service in Microsoft 365. What we usually do when we're building out something, the global navigation usually comes from the intranet. Those are the links that people are all able to access. Remember that there are no dead links, so everything in that hub site navigation for the intranet should be clickable to the person who's looking at it. And it's the things that everybody should most commonly want to get from wherever they are to that place. So it's sort of the place where you can bridge from one part of your tenant to another. It could be a link to go into Power Apps. It could be a link to go into Planner, but it's a way to traverse the tenant, get from one place to the next. Okay.
Awesome. Patrick, HubNav.
Sure. So as we build out a lot of sites, we know that there's the HubNav, which is the main kind of top part there on your web page in SharePoint. We mostly think that links here should go out to content or locations within the hub or outside the tenant. So maybe you have things like high-level organizational information like departments, day-to-day applications. Derek already mentioned that a little bit. Contact information. So maybe that's where the organization's locations is listed. Locations is an interesting one because a lot of people have that also listed on their external internet site. And that I've certainly linked to that there because we don't want people to have to update that information in two spots. Because obviously we want to think about that side of things as well. And also things like company news site. Tends to be a little broader areas, a little bit more higher level than what we would see on our site navigation. But again, providing that scent of information to your departments, to your IT help desk, maybe. Things that people might need access to regardless of whatever site they're on.
Nice.
So next slide.
All right.
So just as an example, because sometimes it helps to have a visual, here we have an organization. So we have about organization. Under that, we have our second tier, which is, for me, always a label as well, just to kind of help set what is in that group of information off. So here we have about balance point. We have your core values, your leadership, and your locations. Next tab over, you have departments. Again, this is grouped depending on your organization. Some have people-related departments like human resources or onboarding or training. And then there are others that are more support-based, like your compliance department, finance, information technology. And then kind of a third one, which is a little bit of a nebulous term, but we have a really hard time getting away from it because people just love it so much, is things like employee resources. And this is where I have applications. So these are, maybe your top 5 applications that people need access to on a daily or weekly basis. I know Mark just asked a question about how many. Generally, I try to keep it in something like this. 5 or less tends to be my rule. Obviously, it's going to depend on your organization and what your rules are around that, but you don't want it to be too long, and you want them to be relatively even. So, applications has 2 here. I need 2, it has 3. We have a lot of instances where one of those might have 10 items in it, and all of a sudden you have all of this white space. So trying to figure out how that is balanced is important. And I do tend to do things like I need to, which is just a way to help drive people to content in a different way. They're thinking, I need to enter my time. Oh, yes, that's going to ADP potentially, or whatever payroll system you use, but you're phrasing it in a way that your user might not, or might pick up on it faster. Anyway, sorry, next slide.
Yeah, no problem, thanks.
Just some do's, or what does belong in Hub navigation: your persistent links, your organizational news sites, your knowledge base, policy centers, day-to-day applications, your departments. Think of your org chart. This is a good spot for that information. Any of those task-based links that you might have to do, like I need to enter my pay, or I want to review my pay stub, or I need to enter my time. Anything that can help people go to what they need directly for high traffic resources. Things that don't really belong there are specific information for a department. You don't need to know the about us to human resources in your Hub navigation. We can put that somewhere else. Links to content a user doesn't have access to. There's a little asterisk here because, yes, it could go there as long as it's audience targeted. So if you have a manager's resource site or a manager's site, you could put that in your Hub navigation as long as you have a security group set up for managers and you can audience target to that group. So it'll appear for them because that's helpful for them, but it lowers the cognitive load for your everyday user. Links to everything. See better practices again. We don't need links to everything. You throw it all at the kitchen sink, people don't see anything, and then they're going to be complaining that they can't find anything. Link farms and vanity links, things that aren't really needed in your navigation.
The vanity links thing was something I put on there. Lots of times there are people in your organization who say, but I have to have this in the top level nav. And it's because they think their thing is most important. And that's what I'm talking about there. So you really have to rationalize it for every user, not the VP who screams the loudest.
One thing I was going to mention too is we've probably all seen from time to time the like open enrollment gets added to the nav as an actual item, where I think some of that promotional type stuff probably really doesn't belong there. It's better served on like a homepage with some context, but I've seen that in a lot of cases where it's like they just want to get something sort of time sensitive up there in the nav, but it should really be for those consistent, standard, and stable things in your environment.
Cool.
Yeah, your nav ought to be sort of perma-changing, right? I mean, you don't want to move things around every 3 days because then people are never going to find anything.
Correct.
All right.
Okay, on to site navigation. This is where we get into the nitty-gritty a little bit, but so sites, most links go to content or locations within the site or outside the tenant. This is where about your department is, what they do, and who to contact. And it's department-specific content that has been curated to aid the users in finding that content. So a human resources may have a benefits dashboard or a human resources dashboard, which I can show you on the next slide. So here we have about us, about human resources, so people can see where you're going and then what we do. We have a benefits dashboard because that tends to be a big one. You'll notice when you drop down here, it's a little bit of a bigger navigational setup here, but we've again broken it out to benefits. those that are more health related, like your medical, dental, vision. Financial, your 401k or your FSA or HSA. Paid time off. That tends to be another area that people look for things rather quickly. Vacation, personal sick time, as well as perks. You know, some organizations have gym memberships or pet insurance. The thought is to group this information together as opposed to having one long list to aid people in finding it faster. And then, of course, a human resources dashboard. Again, we're taking light content and putting it together. So we've got forms, some more how-tos. I need to find out my remaining PTO or view my paycheck, and as well as a new employee portal. So that is information for new employees. And we've just grouped it in a way that they can find that information in a fast way.
All right. There is a question from Krista that I thought I'd bring up. She asks, how do you approach the usage of labels versus links in the nav menu, specifically for sections with a second or third level links? I have the same question. I don't know. I always wonder, should I make the label a link or not a link? I don't know.
It is a tough one. Generally, I try to stick to first and second level are labels only. And that's really to help drive that scent of information to what the user is actually looking for. There are lots of instances where you don't necessarily need a second tier, or your second and third tier are kind of the same thing. So I'm trying to think of an example I just had one and I lost it.
You know, like if you had about us as the top and then about us and then about us, right? I mean, then you don't need the three levels, you just need the top one. And then that can be a link, right?
Technically, generally I do, you know, that's why I do it, you know, about us, about the department, and then contact us. You know, I find subtle ways to make those changes to make it work. The ones where we have, you know, kind of like the benefits dashboard. Some people that might be a page. Well, then you might need a dashboard home in there as your second level tier. So you have your benefits dashboard home, which goes to a page, and then kind of the full information. So it's really your call. I mean, there's no set way reason.
I think just consistency, probably,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Patrick? Like just be
consistency.
consistent,
Yeah.
however you're going to do it across all, so that people aren't wondering if something's a link or not, or just a label or a heading.
Yeah, I think you see that out on the internet when you're wandering around too. Like sometimes the top level is a link, but most of the time it's not. So then you never find that thing that you're actually trying to look for. So
Yeah.
consistency.
Yeah, we also want to avoid link farm pages, right? So if you've got a header called departments, you don't want to be forced to create a page called, you know, departments and put a link farm on there to all the departments that also lives in the navigation. So that's why, you know, we tend to, you know, do more labels and then have level 3 be links. But that's just from the consistency perspective. You don't want to have to create pages that don't need to be created.
And that's the perfect way that I always have the conversation, right? Like you don't need a page you don't want to click to a page with links. The users don't like that. So take that page, make it a label, and put the links in that navigational section, or add it to a quick link section on your homepage. That's the other way to do that, right? Is you have a section, you're taking dashboard and putting all the information in one section, and you're not having to go to another one. We are getting tight on time here, so I'm going to move on to what does and doesn't belong in the site nav. Again, about the department. So instead of about the organization, we have about department. We're keeping that consistency. Tools and resources related to the department. So if there is an application like a human resource third-party app that you use to track things, you would put a link to that there. Forms, procedures, and policies directly related to that department. This can actually ring true for collaboration sites as well. I have been talking about this a lot more in terms of adding some rough IA to our collaboration sites, both in Teams and Teams SharePoint sites. Actually, I have a session about that at ECS this year because I feel like it's something we don't talk about enough. We can apply the same kind of conversations we're having for our communication sites to our collaboration sites at a much higher, not as detailed level, but it can help because we want everyone to do the same. But onto our dozens. Information about other departments. You don't want to go to human resources and see information about the IT barbecue that they had last week. Links to content users don't have access to again. We don't want a link to a user to click on a link and have it go say, you don't have permission. Again, an asterisk here unless you have audience target on about here. So.
Cool. All right, Mark Cashman, what about that SharePoint app bar, my friend?
Yeah, so we've been talking about navigation and it shows up in places. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. But one of the things, at least when you're in SharePoint, is the SharePoint app bar. We've all seen it. We've all used it. Surprisingly, though, when you kind of navigate to it when you're showing somebody and it appears to them as the first time, it's strange that it's always there on the left hand of a SharePoint page or site. But sometimes showing people for the first time, it's like a huge, navigating to the opening of their eyes. But it's a place where you can find a lot that centers around you. So it's very oriented around SharePoint, but it's also centered around you. It starts with global nav. So that's something where you'll find what Mark talked about that's programmed into the home site, Viva Connections, but then plumbs through the SharePoint app bar. But everything beyond that is oriented around your sites, your news, your files, your list. It's also a place where you can create new things, which is a really nice experience if you haven't tried it. Some caveats just when you're either talking about the SharePoint app bar or using it is if you do create a file, it'll go to OneDrive, not always the expectation that it would go into the site, but you can of course move it. The connections element that again, Mark referenced, it won't be there, obviously, if you're not using connections, if you haven't set up a home site and made it your Viva Connections site in Teams, it just won't show up in the app bar. And the last caveat is if you invite external users and you're wanting to encourage people to use the app bar, to know about it, to use it, but if somebody's in as a guest, they just won't see the SharePoint app bar for good reason around privacy and access control so that they're not able to not even see other things in SharePoint, whereas the value here is so that you can see and navigate across a lot of things in SharePoint. So think about it in the upper left. It's very tuned to you in terms of it's very much generated by the graph of you. And again, very oriented around SharePoint pages and SharePoint activity.
Awesome. All right. Well, that pretty much wraps us up for the day. We have some resources here, some stuff from Nielsen Norman and Learn. So that can be good resources if you want to go a little deeper into some of the stuff we talked about today. That leads us to what's next. So February 4th is our next Ask and Praxis, and we're going to talk about that new document library user experience, which I have lots of negative things to say about. I'm sure many others do as well. So come and join the fun on that conversation. Let's see. Mark, and Julie will be at Microsoft 365 Miami. That's coming February 6th, so right after this next episode. And then we are in force at the Microsoft 365 Community Conference. That's in Orlando this year. We have a discount code for you for Sympraxis, which will give you a discount for that. I think it's $150. But I'm not 100% sure about that. And then we are also in force at the European Collaboration Summit, and that is happening in Cologne, Germany this May 5th through 7th, and we have a discount code for that as well. So please consider joining us for some of these live events. If you do, please say hello, and we will all see you next time on February 4th. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
There's one that dropped off. Wait, there's one that dropped off. You know, the DC area. I'll be presenting at Community Days DC on January 30th.
Oh, so. Okay, wonderful. Sorry that dropped off. That was a mistake. Awesome. All right, great. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us this week on Ask and Praxis. We love getting your questions or session ideas. You can submit by using the link in About. If you find this helpful, hit that like or subscribe button and share this content with your colleagues.